Okay, so our guest this episode is the prolific writer and Emory University professor Mark Bauerlein. Dr. Bauerlein is senior editor at First Things magazine. He runs their new podcast, First Thoughts. He's published several books, including the most famous and controversial one, The Dumbest Generation: How the Digital Age Stupefies Young Americans and Jeopardizes Our Future. He has worked for the National Endowment of Arts, and he writes regularly for popular periodicals such as the Wall Street Journal, CNN, the Weekly Standard, the Washington Post, TLS, the Claremont Review of Books, and the Chronicle of Higher Education, among many other outlets. In this interview, Dr. Bauerlein is joining us again on the program to discuss the crisis of the American academy and higher education generally, with a special focus on the current health of the humanities. In our conversation, we attempt to diagnose the problem and come up with some possible solutions. We also discuss the podcast revolution and how the alternative internet media is filling the gaps created by universities. Hi, Dr. Bauerlein. Welcome back to the program.
I'm glad to join you.
So last time you were on the program, we talked about your book, The Dumbest Generation. I think that book is especially relevant now, and I even think it's aged well. The book had a lot to say about people of my generation, the millennial generation, about high school students and test scores. There was a lot of data in that book. I want to start this time by talking about your experience as a university educator, your sort of journey through academia. But can we start with some background? You're an English professor at Emory University. You've been there since, 1989?
1989. I finished my dissertation at UCLA in '88. I spent a year there as a lecturer, among other things, teaching survey courses with about 450 students in them. So I was up on stage, fumbling my way through 45, 50-minute lectures, often, finding myself at humiliating moments. But that's all part of the job of learning how to perform before large classes. Then I went to Emory in '89, and I have been there ever since, with a few breaks. I worked in the federal government for a few years at the National Endowment for the Arts. I had some visiting gigs and fellowships at other places, but mostly my career has been at Emory in the English department there, yes.
So give my listeners a sense of your educational background at Emory, and also maybe you could infuse in there what made you want to become an English professor. What was it that inspired you to devote your whole entire life to scholarship? And then maybe you could also add on to that. What is your focus? Like, what are you doing now? What's your area of expertise in the field of English literature?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I didn't grow up having the ambition to become an English professor. In fact, I didn't even have that ambition until a few years into graduate school. I was a middling student in high school. I think I graduated with a B average, 3.1, which to students today would consign you to, the second tier state universities,
right.
Some satellite campus, given the way the competition has gone up. But I didn't like school. I didn't actually like my teachers. I got in some trouble now and then. Things were pretty sketchy for a while. But I like to read. I read on my own. I was reading things like Freud and Jean-Paul Sartre and catching up on a little Nietzsche when I was 17, 18. I mean, the bookish kind of intellectual type
Sure.
who was interested in the cool, edgy stuff,
Right.
but the serious things. And there were a few other kids like that. And so I had my intellectual curiosities, and I was, thinking about the world and meaning and death and God and all that other stuff that often hit adolescents at that time. And so I went to college. I went to UCLA as an undergrad as well, did very poorly for a time, got some C's, a few D's. Took me 5 years and a few summer schools finally to finish up. It was the quarter system then, so the courses were short. They were only 10 weeks long, but they were intense,
Right.
4 hours a week. And they really worked you very hard. They made you read a lot. And I had a few classes that kept me reading things. I remember one comparative literature class as a freshman. We read the Brothers Karamazov. We read Rilke's Duino Elegies. We read La Jeune Parc by the French poet Paul Valéry, and those really affected me a lot. And they stuck, and I wanted to keep reading those things, so that even though my academic record was, off and on, I wanted to learn what the brilliant minds were saying, and I needed to figure things out. So I finally settled in English, which I took philosophy courses. I took a lot of film courses. Film was very cool back then. In 1981, Fellini and Truffaut. That was cool stuff in Los Angeles, especially. And so I took those classes, and I graduated, and I thought, I don't know what I want to do, except I do want to keep reading. I'm still kind of stupid. And so I just thought I'd apply to a master's program at UCLA simply in order to... I didn't have career ambitions. And after a few years, I kind of slid into the PhD part of the program and finally thought, maybe I can make a career out of this. Wow. I can actually get paid to read this stuff and talk about it? That's pretty amazing.
That's so interesting, though, Dr. Bauerlein, because I think today, and sorry to cut you off there, but something really struck me. What I see today is kind of the opposite of your journey in many ways. I was surrounded by, I majored in philosophy and then I majored in English. And my story is very similar to yours. I read in high school, but I wasn't a serious student. I have a very similar journey. And I was never thinking about the career side of things. I just sort of fell into it. But a lot of my cohort, they were thinking always in a career-minded sense, like where is this going to land me? But you got the sense that they didn't love the literature. Are you seeing a shift in that way of approaching sort of intellectual life?
Well, I will say that the profile of the bookish kid who wasn't thinking about grades so much, a little offbeat was this kid, and didn't have very clear goals in his head. He was thinking more along the lines of this sort of floating intellectual curiosity. So that if I mentioned a book in class that wasn't on the syllabus, the kid might show up in my office a few days later to talk about that book. He went and looked it up. And even though it wasn't, part of the whole achievement necessity on the syllabus, that kind of kid, I think, has largely disappeared. You get students who love literature. There are fewer of them. The English major has shrunk considerably, and so has the foreign language major. In just since, a report came out since 2011, the history major has shrunk more than 30%.
Wow.
English and foreign languages and philosophy have shrunk more than 20%. I mean, look, if these were private businesses, they'd be looking at bankruptcy right now. Their market share has just plummeted. And one reason is we could say that literary culture in general in the United States has diminished.
Right.
Fewer young people read books on their own. Fewer young people are interested in history. The numbers of them in the American Freshman Survey, they ask students coming into college, what do you plan to major in? Geez, history and English, they barely get a couple percentage points.
Right.
Out of the whole population. When I got to Emory in '89, there were 350 majors in a school of about 4,000 undergraduates. So you had about 1 in 11 kids was majoring in English. Now we're down to about 155 majors in a school of 5,000, and that sort of goes along with the trend nationally. So literary culture is just not really part of their thing. And then we can add to it, the cost of college, which makes students a little more mercenary about their ambitions. Got to do something that's going to tie right into a high-paying job when they get out of school, the selective colleges. And then I'll add, finally, the rise of identity politics and political correctness has pushed a few students away from the humanities fields because identity politics are a downer. They're negative.
Yes, they are.
It's not pleasant. Political correctness doesn't make you feel good. And the reason why I ended up majoring in the humanities, why I studied it, wasn't career things. It was because Ivan Karamazov grabbed me. And I was taken by Faulkner's The Sound and the Fury.
Right.
And the things said there really probe deeply. And if I had a teacher up there who just wanted to talk about race in Faulkner all the time, of course it's part of it, but this relentless fixation on identity issues, I just find it a big bore at this point. I mean, apart from the biases and the resentments that go with it, I just want to say, aren't you guys getting tired of this? I mean, I found issues of beauty and sublimity and mortality and betrayal and honor and dignity. Those are much more compelling topics, but those aren't generally the ones that my younger colleagues in particular really care about. And so if they were my teachers when I was 19, I don't think I would have come back.
Right. Because you were intrinsically motivated to learn. You loved the literature. How do we right the ship here? What do we do about this? I want to share some statistics with you. I was just reading about the fact that in the social sciences, Marxists outnumber conservatives 4-1. This was a study put out by Musa Al-Gharbi at Heterodox Academy. There was also an extensive study at around 9,000 tenure-track professors at 51 of the top-ranked liberal arts colleges in the U.S. put out by the NAS, the National Association of Scholars. It found that the ratio of faculty members registered as Democrats compared to Republicans is now 13-1. The researcher there was Mitchell Langbert, and he found that 40% of these colleges had 0 faculty members who were registered Republican. So that means not a single one. Now, what this data suggests to me is that there's a kind of groupthink, an ideological homogeneity, this kind of dogmatic intellectual monoculture right now dominating the academy that I don't think is helping. I don't think it's serving students. And what I worry about is that it's not introducing them to the full range of thought. And I want to share a couple of these with you because this, to me, was just incredible. It blew my mind. Langbert actually broke the study down by subject and discipline, and I'll share a couple of these with you because it's pretty astonishing. In communications, the ratio is 108-0, no registered Republicans in that field. In anthropology, 56-0, again, no registered Republicans. Religion is 70-1. English is 48-1. And so it goes down, down, down. And as it goes down, you start to get out of the humanities. So classics, 27-1. Geoscience, 27-1. You go down and down and down. Philosophy, 18-1. History, 17-1. You go down and down and down. And by the time you get to computer science, it's 6-1. Physics, 6.2-1. Math, 5-1. Economics, 5.5-1. Chemistry, 5.2. You get all the way down to engineering, and it's basically 1.6-1, right? So what do you make of this imbalance? Do you think it's responsible for the sort of tilt, especially in the humanities and social sciences, towards a kind of moral, aesthetic, epistemological relativism, as you mentioned, the identity politics, the kind of gross neo-Marxism, right? Grounded in approaches like critical theory, feminist criticism, all the stuff that you deal with in your department, the intersectionality.
I think that if the job market weren't so bad in the humanities, that we wouldn't nearly have this problem of ideological imbalance. Because if there are a lot of jobs, then you couldn't find the hiring committees being so scrupulous in terms of finding someone who's going to be a good fit for them.
Yeah.
If you've got 150 applicants for one job, and there are always 30 or 40 people who look like reasonable candidates, you need to start refining it even a little more and a little more. And so when you just have a few slots for so many people,
Right.
then the stakes go up. And there's going to be less movement. You're thinking, I'm hiring someone who's going to be with me for life. And that just raises the bar beyond just academic qualifications, but it starts getting more personal and political on these things. And everyone is scared because the job market is so bad. I mean, if you don't get tenure, your life is over. You've spent 7 years in graduate school. Are you going to say anything that is going to raise hackles from people? I mean, I have not heard a surprising, interesting, unusual, unpredictable remark come out of the mouth of a younger person in 20 years.
Right.
I mean, it used to be you had the Young Turks who were mouthing off, and they were a little bit, rebellious. Now they're so diplomatic. They're so institutionalized, and part of the institutionalization is ideological uniformity. You're not going to say one word, one whisper of doubt about the effectiveness of affirmative action in college admissions. You're done. If you say that, you are done.
Right.
And because there's so few jobs out there, you've got to be so careful. So I think that job market condition has fostered the ideological uniformity, because you had most professors back in 1955. Most of them tended to be liberal,
right?
But
4-1.
They weren't so doggone resistant,
right,
to any conservative who might voice a conservative opinion about things. They just didn't feel like they had to guard. They had to guard the gates. Because there were a lot of jobs, a lot of people, a lot of movement from place to place. Now, you're not going to get that. So everyone learns very early on. The successful ones, I should say, have learned to say the right things, to give off the right signals. Not always verbal signals, just sort of the general demeanor, and you intimate your positions on things, and people pick it up. They have good radar now in hiring committees.
Right. So then one consequence of what you're saying, it seems as if what you're going to get is a bunch of professors who are sort of bureaucratic, who are almost have a corporate feel to them, right? The sort of risk averse, institutionalized. Is that a problem that you're seeing in the field right now?
Completely. Everyone is risk averse. Nobody wants to end up being a target of anything.
Right.
I mean, they're all scared of their leftist students.
Right.
I mean, my moderate liberal, colleagues across the country, they generally sympathize with leftist progressivist goals about diversity and things like that.
They're liberals, not wackos.
They're liberals, but they do not like a lot of the methods that the kids use to shut down speakers and sort of. But they're not going to open their mouths.
Right.
They don't want to. They don't want trouble. I struggled through graduate school for years. I finally got a job. I'm working my tail off as an assistant professor. I finally got tenure. I don't want any fights. Right. I've got kids. I have a mortgage.
Right.
I've got to keep doing research, and I don't want complication here. So most academics tend to be timid people. They keep their heads down. They stay the left, and it's the leftist firebrands who have all the passion.
Right.
You only need a few of them to hijack the direction of a department.
True.
Everyone else would just kind of go along and just leave me alone. So.
Right. Right. Well, I think the same thing's happening at the classroom level with students. I remember when I was in graduate school, I was taking a world literature course, and we were reading the book Disgrace by J.M. Coetzee. And there was a scene when he's a romantic literature professor in Cape Town, and he sleeps with one of his students, and we had to read that for homework. And we came in the next day, and it was 7-1. There were 7 women in the class. This was a graduate course, and I was the only male, as is usually the case in these English courses. And everyone was upset after we had read this, and they were fuming. And the professor started the course, and the girls were all upset, and they said they didn't want to read the book anymore because that was rape. Now, first of all, I think...
Where was this?
This was Ithaca College. I was doing my master's in education so that I could become a high school teacher, and we had to take certain core requirements to get an English master's in teaching. And so there were seven women, and then there was me, and they were all upset, and they said that this is a terrible book, right? This is a book that we shouldn't be reading. And I asked, I was always the one person in class to just speak up and say, what are you talking about, right? And so they said, well, this was rape. And I said, yeah, well, rape happens in life all the time. And also, I think it's debatable whether or not it was rape. He was certainly using his power. He was taking advantage of her. Let's just go with it and say it was rape. Why is that out of bounds in a work of literature? And I'll never forget this. The one girl's response was, we shouldn't be reading this because the author is a white man speaking from a place of privilege.
Oh, brother. I mean, can't you think of something that hasn't been said a million times before? I mean, do you have to read from such the same tired script? It's like you're not even talking as a self. You know, Jordan Peterson in his interviews will hear people say these kinds of things, and he'll say, it's like you're not even here.
Right. It's like you're running...
This isn't you talking. This is something else talking through you. Can't you even find some different words in which to describe this?
Yes,
brother.
That was
and what did the professor do?
The professor was... He was a pretty good professor. He was trying to calm them down, and he was giving them the talk that a grown-up would give to a 5th grader about how we need to be big boys and girls, and we need to understand that, you know, this book is titled Disgrace. It's about the professor's disgrace. I didn't actually like the line that he took, because the track that he took was trying to explain to them that this is a bad man, and the story is kind of didactic in the sense that it shows you he's a bad man and he's disgraced, right? But my point was, what does the author's identity have to do with whether or not this is a worthy and beautiful work of literature? And I got no answers. And as you said, it reminds me of that interview that Jordan Peterson did with that woman at GQ, where he said, you know, he's basically saying your ideology is, what you're saying is algorithmic. The ideology that you have programs the algorithm, and I know everything that you're going to say. And it's really obnoxious, and it made me feel like, as bold as I am, I didn't want to speak out in class often, because I just didn't feel like getting into one of these fights.
Because, you know, Jordan, what would happen is if you say, come on, you guys, grow up.
Right.
You're done.
Yeah.
You're done. They're going to hate you forever because of what you just said. Yeah. And so this is how the conformity works, right? It's coercive. You need re-education.
Right.
You have the wrong thoughts. Period. And this is where identity politics leads. I mean, identity politics leads to quotas, and it leads to a hierarchy of representations. Your representation has to be tied to your identity, one way or another. It could ennoble you, or it could disqualify you.
Right.
This is where we are in the little hothouse zones of the college campus today. And it was coming. It was coming all along.
Yep.
And the liberals have always thought, no, we'll get past this. And that's just an extreme thing going on when they shouted down a professor, a speaker, that was bad, but you know, don't make too big a deal of it. And if we just kind of ignore it and move on, then hey, we can get back to our well functioning society. Well, I don't think I think we're past that now.
So what do you think will happen here? What do you think will happen here? What will the humanities look like in the next 20 years or so? Because what we have right now with the speech codes and the speech zones and the safe spaces and the microaggression reporting hotlines and the anti-bias training and the kangaroo courts and even things like grade inflation and the growth, the crazy growth of university administration over the growth of faculty. Where is all of this going? What is to become of the academy?
What is happening is that resources are steadily shifting away from the humanities. And we've read about this. One, undergraduate enrollments are shifting away from the humanities. Students are voting with their feet.
Right.
And the administrations are responding. I mean, here is how a college president looks at the humanities today at a selective, school with lots of money. It's always a comparative thing. What's going on in the sciences versus what's going on in the humanities? Well, the sciences are we run a hospital. Universities run lots of hospitals. We've got researchers there working on diseases. We are taking care of a lot of poor people in our communities. We've got a contract. We've got plans to create a $500 million new medical building here, and then we've got the humanities, where we got these little departments. They're not very expensive. They run things like freshman comp courses. We need those, but in the full scale of things, they don't really need relatively much attention. I mean, I'm going to worry about a women's studies professor who's a bit of a wacko when in an hour I've got a meeting with the architects and the design people who are showing me plans for a new $250 million addition to the library.
Right.
What am I going to care about here? The Emory started the School of Public Health 25 years ago. They get they admit about 500 MPH students every year.
Wow.
English admits 7, 8, 9.
Right.
So, if you're an administrator, you don't want to cut the humanities, but you're not going to put a lot of money in them. Your attention is just going to go elsewhere. And we will let the undergraduates shift over to the business school. They're going over to psychology. They're taking care of the problem of the malaise of the humanities for us. We're not going to have to replace as many professors. When the English department major is half the size that it used to be, we'll let people retire, and when the time comes, we're not going to replace them because their classes are half full.
Right.
They don't need them. So that's what's going on here. I think that's the way the administrations deal with problems. If they're letting it take care of itself, you're a bureaucrat. You're not going to jump in,
right.
Take any big steps to make it better. And they don't care. I mean, sure, as people, as education, yeah, we like people to read Shakespeare, but that's not part of their job. They're not gonna try to push for more Shakespeare,
right,
for all the students on campus. No.
So I have a bachelor's in philosophy and also one in English, and I wanted to ask about the sort of standards and expectations in your discipline, whatever's left of it. And I've got to say, at least when I was in school, philosophy was still strong. Like, we had to read the classics. We had to take a course on Plato and Aristotle. We had to take Descartes, Hume, and Kant, metaphysics, epistemology, methods of reasoning. And the focus was on writing well and clearly. My experience, I got a second bachelor's in English so that I could go to grad school for it. My experience in English was not this way. We were not required to take a course on the history and structure of the English language. Most of the classes were, you sit in a circle and you chit chat about the books. And what you have with a lot of these courses is a bunch of teenagers pontificating about the book in a disorganized fashion. I feel like Raskolnikov is like sad that his sister is marrying that guy, and I'm what I saw and what I am seeing in education is that there's this there's this shift in education away from that rigor, and also there's a new shift in pedagogy happening. There's a shift away from this sort of sage on the stage mentality and a move towards this kind of social constructionism, this Vygotskian sociocultural theory where the expectation is that the students do all the talking and the teacher is just in the background, right? A guide on the side, a facilitator, to use the educational jargon. What's the current health of your discipline in terms of the standards, in terms of what students have to take to become an English teacher or to get an English degree? What's going on in your field there?
Well, I think that certainly standards have gone down, requirements have gone down. A lot of schools now for a PhD, you can get by with just one reading knowledge of a foreign language. You couldn't do that in the past. I was certainly you go back 100 years, everyone had to take Latin and Greek.
Right.
As undergraduates, everyone had to do that. The greater emphasis toward contemporary literature, which is easier to read than medieval and Renaissance literature, certainly. And you have more shift toward multiculturalism. We don't want to push too much John Milton and Chaucer and Alexander Pope onto students who have a non-European family heritage. So this all makes for the production of young people who aren't, at the graduate and undergraduate level, who aren't as well-read as they used to be. They're not as informed about historical matters going back. Their religious knowledge is just nil.
Right.
And the most important book in all of American history is the King James Bible. Let's go ask how many humanities, young humanities graduates can say anything about the King James Bible.
Right.
The only book the only great piece of writing ever done by committee.
And they need to know that to understand American literature.
Of course. I mean, look, the speeches of Abraham Lincoln,
right?
The speeches of William Jennings Bryan. I mean, the King James Bible is everywhere in American history, American culture, American politics. I mean, it was just part of the air that people breathed back then. So the degree of historical illiteracy in the broadest sense of the term is extraordinary among college graduates today because the curriculum doesn't make them do it.
So how do we work to reform your discipline? Who's going to step forward? Do we need more Hillsdale colleges? I live right down the street from UMass Amherst, and I just wanted to see. I got curious one day, and I looked at the list of dissertations. I wanted to see what are PhD students in English doing. I'm going to read you a couple of the titles of the dissertations.
Okay.
I'm going to do this to you. The first one, The Blackness of Blackness, Meta-Black Identity in the 20th and 21st Century African American Culture. Here's the second one, Demanding Spaces, 1970s U.S. Women Novels as Sites of Struggle, Theaters of War, Performing Queer Nationalism in Modernist Narrative, Enduring Affective Rhetorics, Transnational Feminists in Action, Homosexuality is a Poem, How Gay Poets Remodeled the Lyric Community and the Ideology of Sex to Theorize a Gay Poetic. They just go on and on. Some of them aren't in English.
Yeah.
On and on and on and on. All of them.
It's like late scholastic philosophy. And we're going to examine the angels on the head of a pin. we're going to start scrupulously examining our words so much, and it's these microscopic little contentions and fields. And, they're all trying to do original research, but, God, it all sounds so cliched. I mean, is there going to be an original thought in any of these things?
Do we move towards the Hillsdale College model? I mean, I totally admire that place. We're doing a segment here at the Western Canon Podcast called The Guide to Great Books Colleges, and the first one that I reviewed was Hillsdale College. Is there a way to move towards a great books model?
Well, here's what I see. There are a few things going on. You've got these little programs in different places around the country that are taking place outside of normal departmental structures. For instance, there's something at Clemson called the Lyceum program. It's a really political science program. It's a minor. You have to take 8 courses, and it's a minor in the great works of political theory: Aristotle, Plato, Hobbes, Karl Marx. It's intense, and the students have to meet with professors every week for tutorials that go along with the little Socratic classes that they run. For 10 students, they give a scholarship of $2,500 a year. And when it started 4 years ago, they got a couple hundred applications for those scholarships. Pretty good. They're now close to 600 applications for those scholarships. The demand is so high, they opened it so that non-scholarship students could do it as well. So these students get nothing, and these are very hard, demanding courses. In 2 years, they've gone from 0 to 130 students.
Wow.
The students want these challenging, great books, and they get a minor out of it, but it's something that appeals to students far beyond the idea of career and money, and they are frank about these are great books, these are great ideas, these are works for the ages. And that draws the students in, and it's a separate program. Political science doesn't oversee it; it's run through political science, but it has its separate institutional home.
Yeah.
The president loves this program because alumni love it. The admissions office loves this program because a lot of students apply just to be part of that program. There are similar things happening on many campuses around the country. So that while we see enrollments plummeting in the traditional departments, these little programs, there's one at Texas, they're doing something at Oklahoma, I could go on. They are in this unusual and enviable position of not being able to accommodate all the people who want to come to them.
Right.
So I've written about these little places here and there, and I want to spread the word that this is a future for the humanities to go back to the old-fashioned, traditional stuff. Because Shakespeare is not boring, dead white male, pedestrian, familiar stuff. If you think that, then you haven't read King Lear.
Right.
You haven't read Macbeth.
Everything is in Shakespeare.
I mean, there is power and greatness there, and challenge and profundity, and the whole relevance issue. Well, that's old stuff, and how can that appeal to some kid who grew up in the 21st century in the ghetto? Believe me, it's all there to relate to for anyone at any time, at any place. And the people who do scoff at these old-fashioned kinds of programs are people who haven't read that much.
Yeah.
They are themselves not very educated.
Right, and the more educated you are, the better that you can appreciate them, because Shakespeare will never be irrelevant. Shakespeare will never be old. I think people, as you said, these programs are growing because people are yearning for something that's timeless, that's something that isn't trendy, something that's not going to, a dogma that's not going to go away in 10 years. I wanted to shift gears here. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Jordan Peterson actually is trying to do some kind of great books online university program. Have you heard of that?
Well, I've seen him recommending books on Twitter,
Yeah, he does
maybe
that too.
this is one of the ways of getting the word out.
Yeah.
That he's trying to begin, and this is great. This is great, and in a way, it's in the hands. What he's doing on that score is what happened in the mid-20th century in the United States. There was a great effort on the part of publishing companies and some academics to bring great books to the masses.
Definitely.
So we had projects like the Great Books of the Western World. We had the Encyclopedia Britannica, and those were building knowledge out there in Nebraska.
Yep.
And we had Book of the Month Club, and there were some very good books that Book of the Month Club recommended.
Right.
And so this was let's educate everyone. We are picking the elite stuff, but it's for everyone.
That's right.
We're not elitists. We're elitists about the content. We're
Right.
not elitists about audiences.
Very
we want
good.
everyone to do this. And there was a big audience in the United States for high culture, high literature. When Texaco used to broadcast the Met Opera every Saturday in 1950, when you had about 165 million people, about 12 or 13 million tuned in every week. One in 11, 12, 13 people listened to Puccini and Wagner and all that every week. And so this idea of elite culture being stuffy and being condescending, that's wrong. It's completely wrong.
So do you see this, what you're describing, do you see this happening at the level of podcasts and YouTube and the internet? Because I think what we're saying about Jordan Peterson and what Jordan Peterson has said before is that he's actually going to try to start an online university, and he's going to try to get teachers from all sorts of different domains to teach about, to do the great books, to sort of start from, the Iliad and go and zoom in at different levels of resolution and teach all of these courses from all these different time periods. I know he's investing a lot in that right now. Do you see this as a kind of YouTube podcast revolution, as a kind of new democratic revolution of sorts?
Well, this is where it has to happen because the traditional institutions aren't doing it. The phenomenon of Peterson is he's doing philosophy and psychology and ethics for the masses. He really is, and he believes in reaching wide audiences. This is the transference of what the institutions were committed to in the past, but that have become much more about an elite crew now. And Peterson's filling in the gap, and YouTube and Twitter are now the media through which you reach a group. I mean, when Peterson does an interview, you get 1 million views.
That's right.
1 million people listen and watch. And the intellectual dark web. Someone like Sam Harris or Stéphane Molyneux. A lot of people hate what they have to say, but they're intelligent people, and they're discussing real issues. When you go into the schools and the classroom, a lot of people say these are artificial issues,
right?
And the way you're talking about them is so coded and institutionalized.
That's right.
That I just can't relate. I can't relate to this. But they can relate to Paul Joseph Watson talking about these issues.
Do you think that this is the slow death of the sort of mainstream media? Do you think that the sense that I get, and I know that I've gravitated, I barely watch anything on television, and I almost exclusively, for my entertainment, unless I'm watching a film with my wife, I am listening to podcasts, I am online for this stuff. I know for me, the yearning that I have is I want to see a real conversation I want to see Steven Pinker talk for 2.5 hours on Joe Rogan. I want to see Jordan Peterson do a half-hour long interview, on YouTube. Do you think that it's the sort of CNN panel 5-minute phony sloganeering discussion? Do you think that this is going to be the sort of death knell for the mainstream media? I get the sense that people are sick of it.
Here's the funny thing. You listen to Jordan Peterson or other of the alternative intellectuals. They'll go on for 20, 30 minutes online. People will watch. And it is a disquisition. You turn on the TV news and you get the the little conversations, the snippets that never involve genuine intellectual engagement. I mean, am I going to go see something on MSNBC that is going to ponder issues in any reflective or even empirical way? Am I going to see a debate, a genuine back and forth debate take place here, or is it just going to be a show?
Well, we used to have that. You used to have that. You used to have that on television. You used to have Milton Friedman had a show, right? We used to have intellectual programming, right? I'll
tell you what. Go to that Monk debate that took place between Peterson and it was really the Peterson and Michael Eric Dyson. Now you compare Michael Eric Dyson's comments, and he's the TV guy.
He's a mean
He appears
man,
on MSNBC all the time. And compare those to Peterson's remarks. Right. Peterson is trying to think through issues. He's pausing, and Dyson is just a blowhard. He's just a TV performer. That's all he is, apart from all the grammatical solecisms and the misapplication of terminology. He strings these words together and he uses the wrong ones often. Then you see, the difference between good intellectual activity through the alternative media and bad intellectual activity through the traditional media. There it is, consolidated, right up front. So
I agree with you. And Peterson, you can genuinely tell when he's speaking, and with what he's trying to do, that he's really trying to explore something. Right? Whereas someone like Michael Eric Dyson is constantly just cobbling together platitudes to sell us a kind of racial grievance. And you can tell the difference between someone who's selling you something and someone who's genuinely trying to figure things out. And I think Jordan Peterson is doing that.
Right, he is, and that's what people responded to. There's something authentic. There's something real in him, and he's been. I mean, what is that? If you want to know how bad the Monk debate was, Michael Eric Dyson said, listen, angry white man, you've got to learn to listen. I want you to listen to other people describe their experiences. Jordan, you know that Peterson is a clinical psychologist. He spent thousands and thousands of hours listening to patients, seeing them week after week. He's interviewed thousands of subjects in clinical studies. So, what are you talking about, you fool? His whole career has been based on listening to people. So just foolishness. The problem is that the correction of the Michael Eric Dysons isn't done in the traditional media. It doesn't get shaken out on the alternative media. It does.
Exactly.
And you get you get a lot of mockery going on in those places, but I think it's healthy overall. It's healthy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's part of what has gravitated so many people to Jordan Peterson? I mean, I've never seen anything like it. He now has the reach and the ability to just tour the world, pick a theater and just sell it out instantly. I drove to New York City to see him, and as you said, his videos are getting 1 million views, and he'll be talking about something like Jung or Dostoevsky, and there are 1 million people watching that, and I think that that's incredible. Do you think that part of his refreshing, a pull for people is that he's saying no? He's like Bartleby, the scrivener. He's saying no, right? When he goes on Channel 4 with Kathy Newman, I don't know if you saw that interview, but it was really incredible.
Oh, yeah.
He just doesn't. He's not going to humor her. He's not going to let her say something that's untrue. He's going to challenge her. He has the unique ability to say no and to say what we're all thinking, but we can't put into words or are afraid to put into words. Do you think that that's part of it, that you feel like someone's finally standing up to these bullies?
Well, what was amazing was even before he became famous, his no to the gender pronoun demands, the legal demands.
Right.
This is what did it. And how easy would it have been for Peterson, a tenured professor at Toronto? He does his work. Life is good. He's got a well-paying job. He's established. He can run out his career.
Right.
As a very comfortable professor, and all he has to do is, yeah, all right. Someone wants me to call him, her, whatever. It's no big deal. He said no.
Right.
He just said no. I'm not going to do that. You're not going to make me do that. I might decide to do that in a personal situation.
Right.
I'm not going to allow a law, the state, to tell me that I must change my language here. And he was threatened. He was harassed. He was shouted down. He had people demanding that he be fired. He had to have, difficulties. The administration wanted him to shut his mouth. And he said no. And a whole lot of people were likewise wanting someone, please say no. And he did. And I think that's what started it all. And he had the whole psychology profession, remember, telling him he was wrong.
Right.
On the gender pronoun stuff. But he wouldn't, there are some things I just will not take. I'll take a lot. But here's a line, and I'm not moving, and you're going to have to knock me down. Okay, and that's what people were waiting for.
Right, someone to draw a line.
Please, will someone draw a line? Yeah.
So I'd like to wrap up now, but I wanted to ask if you were working on anything that you would like to promote, if you have any plans that you'd like to share with my listeners.
I'm still working at First Things Magazine. We like people to subscribe to
your
the
podcast
magazine.
is great, by the way. First thoughts.
Good. We want people to listen to the podcast. Try and get interesting people and a variety of people as well. This is where I write a lot for the Journal of American Greatness and for the American Spectator, some of the online publications, for CNN, and trying to actually make the case against the identity politics and political correctness and the establishment, the DC establishment, that really has become a pernicious force in American life.
And CNN they're letting you write for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it speaks well of them. I think they know we've got to have a few pro-Trump people
right.
here, if only to make things a little more interesting for our listeners. I mean, we do want to have occasionally someone to open a web page and get surprised.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Bauerlein. I hope that you'll consider joining us again in the future. I really loved this conversation, and thanks again.
I enjoyed it.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jordan.